I asked you who you were working for.
Give us the first memory that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Could be a long story, could be one word.
Yeah.
Quantum of Solace.
A lot of problems. No, it was all good. It's all fine. It's all great. Yeah. I think the rooftop chase in Siena, which is at the beginning of the movie, which was a lot of. Before I started Bond, I had a genuine fear of heights. I mean, like, not great at all. And when I don't anymore.
Wow.
But I had to get up there and sort of like incrementally go higher and higher and higher and higher, and then eventually I was sort of leaping out of windows onto one, you know, into moving buses. It was sort of like, you know, it was quite an arc.
Wow.
It's part of the problem maybe with some of us that we thought this is the becoming Bond. This is the Batman Begins, you know, Bond Begins. After this, we're going to be back to normal Bond films in inverted commas. Was anyone like, yes, I'm so glad Quantum follows on immediately? Was anyone like, yes, that's what I want? Don't all say.
I'll say I didn't know I wanted it until I
Oh,
saw
good,
it.
right, that's fine. Yeah.
So, and again, just kind of going into Quantum, just kind of going in with that shot going into the car chase, and then you're just like, okay, we're just in some sort of what's going on here, and you don't realize till the end that, oh, Mr. White's in the trunk. This takes place right after Casino Royale. This is incredible. I didn't realize they were going to do that. Obviously, I'd never been done.
It's time to get out.
But I think it makes a lot of sense just at the end, everything he's gone through with Vesper. It wouldn't fit this style. It wouldn't fit Craig's Bond just to go on to the next girl. This didn't affect him at all. I think it makes sense for his character to see how it affects him and see him wanting to find out why she did what she did, going to find this organization, burn it down, and just figure out what the heck just happened. So I wasn't expecting it. It's not necessarily something that I think would work maybe beyond this kind of contained universe, so to speak. But I enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised by it. I'll go to bat for Quantum all day. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, certainly when I first watched it at the cinema, I was like, what is going on? This is definitely what I don't want from Bond. And it must have been about 4 years ago. I think it might have been in COVID when I watched it again. And it was like, wow, this is way better than I remembered. And I almost felt like I'd got a new Bond film to watch. So I don't know. I've sort of had a soft spot, which might have maybe sort of skewed my opinion of it too positive to some people's eyes. But every time I watch it, I enjoy it. And, you know, I went to Siena in the summer and saw that. And it's just things like that where you appreciate some of the settings and some of the ideas they had. I think it would be churlish to say it's my favourite Craig film, because that would almost be saying, come on, Casino Royale, you didn't do it. You didn't get it quite right, you know. This is how you do it. Because I do. It's easier to watch. I don't have to worry about the whole betrayal and the stress of it. And I'm not saying it's a Sunday afternoon Bond, but Casino Royale is a real. You've got to be sitting down, and it's pretty intense. It's quite an intense film as well, and it's longer. That's the other thing. I'm at peace with Quantum of Solace now, and certainly when you watch those two together, I think they probably improve them each, in my eyes, probably now. But does anyone think that should have been it with the Vesper storyline? Because, of course, in No Time to Die, it comes back again.
Well, I thought, yes, that it was a nice conclusion. I always saw Quantum of Solace as Casino Royale too, you know, it was the conclusion. It ended really nicely.
Bond, I need you back.
I never left.
He dropped he avenged her, he dropped the love knot in the snow. It ended on that scene, and it was it sealed it and tied it with a bow, and it was very nice. When the Vesper Lynd character came back with the interrogation tape in L'Americaine, even though he discards that was sort of like a recurring theme. And then obviously the tomb in Matera, it kind of made me think that they were making something out of nothing. That had already been done. And Bond, Daniel Craig being this like, you know, blunt instrument, for want of a better phrase, had dealt with that. And so I guess it did add another dimension to him in the fact that it was still echoing in his mind, even though he was in this new and highly successful relationship with Madeline Swan. Um, but it did seem a bit odd that they kind of shoehorned it into No Time to Die, if that makes sense. I think the tip of the hat to it in L'Americaine was great, but having it sort of be a pivotal part of the start of No Time to Die was a bit much for me, I think. They
I
should have
feel
maybe just
like
did it with Quantum.
in No Time to Die, I feel like Vesper was put in there to give her blessing to Madeline, basically, because it's quite a
Mm.
big thing that Bond fell in love in Casino Royale, and that's spilled over into Quantum of Solace. So, a love story has taken up two films, that's fine, that's absolutely fine. But then for him to have a new love just two films later, that's making him consider everything, it's making him
Mm.
consider resigning. Like, if it's to help convince you that Madeline is also a serious love for him. So I think that's why there's
Yeah.
the influence of Vesper Lynd in No Time to Die, in my opinion.
I think
But
just to offer an opinion, sorry, on the whole Vesper thing and throughout the series, if that's all right. Like, I think in some ways the victims of it being, so good in Casino Royale that audiences were like, hang on, I don't think we want him to move on to someone else. And, hang on, maybe that chemistry isn't as good as previously. I mean, something to compare it to, and I don't normally compare Mission Impossible to Bond because of this, but the character of Julia, Michelle Monaghan, was introduced in Mission Impossible 3, and then she was alluded to in Ghost Protocol, the fourth film, and then not mentioned in the fifth film. And apparently, Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie were constantly asked, "What's happened to Julia? What's happened to Julia?" If you know what I mean. So then they had to address it in Fallout. So I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but in the love story was such a big part of Daniel Craig's first James Bond film that it almost cast a shadow over. There's the ghost of Vesper in some ways throughout. So I felt it was quite a difficult one, and modern audiences are not used to someone having a new love interest in every single one. Where I think they like to see someone almost falling in love or not have a love interest rather than you know a good night where, well, she's there, and our paths often cross, so let's find the nearest bedroom type thing.
I think one of the big positives of Quantum of Solace is the fact that Camille isn't a romantic interest with Bond. I think she's a great female ally, and it's one of them ones where you watch it, there's enough chemistry to believe in a different time in their life they could totally be a couple. There's good chemistry there, but it's very respectful of the Vesper story to not realize that at that time it's just not right for them to be involved romantically. And I think that's good writing.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. You all right?
Fine. But I keep thinking, he's dead. Now what?
All the down we saw will have to come down. And there'll be others too. Someone who worked for Green might be of help.
Not a bad idea. Do you think they'll be able to sleep now?
I don't think the dead care about vengeance.
I wish I could set you free. But your prison is in there.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big positives of Quantum.
Yeah, I think Quantum is actually very essential to the five films in terms of his relationship with Vesper, I think. And I think the essential piece of his mentality comes from Mathis when he says, "Forgive her, forgive yourself."
We forgive each other. I shouldn't have left you alone. Vesper, she gave everything for you. Forgive her. Forgive yourself.
So I do think at the end of Quantum, he drops the necklace, he got the answers he wanted. I genuinely think he forgives Vesper and he kind of goes on. And Skyfall, she's not mentioned. Spectre, he finds the tape, and Blofeld or Oberhauser is the one prodding him, but Bond's not saying anything about it. And then when he gets to Matera, she's wanting to have him come to terms with it, and he leaves that note, "Forgive me." So I think
Yeah.
how I'm reading it is he never forgave himself for not reading her, as we kind of mentioned earlier. Like Casino Royale, there were red flags, but he was just blind to it. And then, in Skyfall, when he tells Severine, he's like, "I know when a woman's afraid," and pretending not to be. Like, I think he's internally, I think he's just eaten up with guilt for not saving her, for not seeing those red flags, and for not being able to save the woman he loved. And I think it's just eaten away at him in these 5 films. And I think Madeline can kind of read that too. So I think she's saying, you got to leave her behind. You got to leave this, you got to let go of this. And so when he leaves that "forgive me" sign, I think that's what it kind of boils down to. And I think that key line is from Mathis. And so I think that's why I love Quantum, because there's a lot of little moments in there that really feed into his entire filmography.
Madeline can never live up to Vesper, can she? In terms of the audience, whether they like her and rate her as a Bond girl. But you could say I much prefer Vesper, but I'm glad with that Bond found someone else. I suppose you can have it both ways, but then we're complicated with the daughter, and where does it leave everything going forward? I suppose.
Yeah. So are you asking like if she's as good of a character?
Yeah, I don't know whether does anyone
Okay.
think she can
Yeah.
hold a candle to Vesper in terms of a character or God,
Yeah.
Steve.
Or
No,
maybe she.
Oh,
I
sorry.
think
Go on,
she's great. Sorry, I think I think their chemistry isn't that great in Spectre. I think it's okay, but I genuinely think that they um, right the ship in No Time to Die. I think they have a lot to work with that they didn't in Spectre. But yeah, I think it's just just got to find that new person. It's just like someone new. It's not kind of like what is that in Lethal Weapon 4? It's different. It's not better. It's different. So it's just just finding a new love.
In terms of Daniel Craig sort of building his Bond, building as a character throughout his 5 films, I almost think that bringing Vesper back in No Time to Die was wrong, because I feel she was almost like a lesson that he would learn, that maybe not to fall in love, maybe not to be deceived so easily, because somebody could be playing you, as Vesper pretty much was in the first film. So I think the fact that he falls in love with Madeline Swan, um, maybe he's done all of his checks, and he's he hasn't allowed himself to be fooled by her. So therefore, through doing his sort of due diligence, having learned that from his relationship with Vesper, she's more of the real deal, if that makes sense. So even more of a genuine love for Madeline, versus what he thought he had was Vesper, which ultimately was just a life lesson for a double O.
Well, he's not with either of them too long, but that
Well,
itself doesn't matter. But you could say he gets Vesper all wrong in his own head at the time because he didn't see that she was duplicitous, even though I think we should have some sympathy for her character, and she was forced to do it, of course.
yeah.
And he gets it wrong with Madeline, doesn't he? Because he thinks she's in on it with Blofeld, and he does it.
I know. And that annoys. That does one of. I like No Time to Die. I'm probably one of the few people that do, but that bit does annoy me, and I think a little bit of communication in the film would have gone in a totally different direction.
Talk to each other.
He might not have missed out on a pregnancy and 5 years of his daughter's life. So there you go. just a little bit of conversation, and she could, even if she just grabbed him and screamed it at him in the DB5, maybe, yeah, things would have been a bit different.
Chris, Quantum, come on.
Well, there's a couple of things.
Yeah.
One, at the time, I found the idea of the film continuing straight after Casino Royale kind of quite exciting. Never done that before. I think now, I think it's a bit of a misstep. I think that that the whole sort of Vesper thing is overdone. I think through the entire series, his sort of tenure, because Vesper was supposed to be the reason why Bond didn't really have any relationships and didn't trust women, and that was supposed to be, and that's what I always took Casino Royale to be. He's the rough diamond. He's not quite Bond yet because he's bullish and he's like makes silly mistakes, and he's not quite the charming, suave agent who sleeps with different women. I always thought that was that's why we were given that version, which is why the pre-titled sequence in the toilet is so perfect for the film, because it is, can't get any kind of grubbier, dirtier kind of, than Bond having a fight in, toilets. And so I thought, I thought Quantum should have been that you're starting to see him be a bit smoother, a bit more, but also a bit sort of colder. So when I watch it again now, I struggle with it just simply because obviously there's all the whole sort of stuff around the script and stuff. It's still an enjoyable film to watch. I think it has a lot of good stuff in there. It doesn't feel like a Bond film. I don't come away feeling that I've watched a Bond film. It's very entertaining. It moves at a great pace and it takes you to new, interesting places. So, let's say you get to go to new locations. So the inclusion of some female characters that are actually, relatively well written. But then on the other hand, you have the seduction scene around stationery. So it's like, every good thing he gets at the end.
I can't find the stationery. You come and help me look.
So I kind of do struggle with this one. And I think that for me, this is where the initial misstep of this idea that we could somehow start tying things together across each film. And I think this is, I think it just doesn't work, because he came to each one not with an overarching idea of how we're going to stitch this all together eventually, but as he went along. And that's why it gets the quality in writing is patchy in terms of let's reference to this. And you get that a lot, obviously, in Spectre at the end, where it's like we're pulling everything together as much as we can. And for me, it's not very convincing, because that was never the intention in the first place. And they sort of retrofitting. Quantum, the organization, I think is played brilliantly. I think it's the real strength of the film is this sense of this organization that is, as they say, is everywhere, that they're, can't be trusted. There's a real sort of building of this tension, sort of, who can you trust? It was really, really well done.
The first thing you should know about us is that we have people everywhere. Am I right?
Later on, and that's why my frustrations with Spectre is that you throw Quantum, the organisation, under the bus, because now you've got Spectre, the brand, and again, it's that I really do kind of struggle with those kind of creative choices. As a film, it is one of the more entertaining of the 5 Daniel Craig films. Is it his best? No, I would say again, Casino Royale is probably his the best film. Again, Skyfall's really entertaining as well. It has a lot going for it, Quantum, but there's also it is messy. I feel like I would like for someone to go back and maybe do like a director's cut or have another go at it, because there's some scenes just don't kind of work for me.
So often completely maligned. I watched it recently, very recently actually, last week, and I really enjoyed it. I'm going to be really honest, really, really enjoyed it. I've got absolutely no shame, qualms, no nothing. I really, really enjoyed it. I even enjoyed the opening, which people seem to, really not like. I mean, I don't go along with so much, but I actually think it's a really good movie. for the most part. Again, I have my problems with this incarnation of Bond. Not Daniel Craig, this incarnation of James Bond. He's getting people killed left, right and centre, isn't he? And there are some things in this film that I find so questionable that I can't really get on board with or ever work out how I feel about those things. The binning of Mathis.
Is that how you treat your friends?
He wouldn't care.
Yes, I know. Yes, but this is what he would do. But I don't really care about that. You know, I want to root for this guy. And I find it very hard to root for a protagonist who behaves in such a way.
Fair enough, you know, getting rid of the body, that's one thing. But then there's the way he does it and mugging him as well. But yeah, is anyone... Go on, Nikolai, yeah, please.
Yeah. I know a lot of people have a problem with that scene. I understand why. But maybe it's also because I'm not so sentimental about corpses, I guess. But I don't know. I feel like once you're a secret agent, you can kind of expect, first of all, to get murdered, and then maybe your body not being handled in the most, appropriate way. I actually have a bigger problem with Mathis sort of trying to further Bond's redemption arc in his little emotional speech beforehand, because I like the idea of it, but it always comes off as really sort of forced and melodramatic to me. The whole forgive Vesper, forgive yourself. It's just, I feel like it could have been written better, and that's maybe where the whole writer's strike didn't really favor the movie.
So what's keeping you awake?
I was wondering why you came with me.
It takes something to admit you were wrong. You want a sleeping pill?
No.
Pain pill? No. I have pills for everything. Some make you taller. Some make you forget.
But I think in terms of him throwing the body in the dumpster and mugging him, probably supposed to, what I assume is that we're supposed to think that it's going to throw the Bolivian police off of the scent because it looks like a mugging. I don't know if it works plot-wise once you think that, the police were the ones who killed Mathis, so they would probably know that there was some connection to Bond there, but I don't have a big problem with it. It's just, it might be unnecessary, but it never bothered me that much.
Well, the audience are meant to think, hang on, this is a bit much, because she says the line, doesn't she? Is that how you treat your friends? It's meant to be seen as pretty objectionable.
Yeah, but I guess, if you were... I'm actually not sure if Mathis would have a problem with that, because of course Bond answers like he wouldn't mind it. And I'm like, maybe he wouldn't. Yeah.
He doesn't know Mathis that well. He's only met him a few times.
Yeah, no, that's actually It's why that emotional speech comes off as a bit too much to me.
About Mathis, just because that always was a head scratcher for me, just because I think what they're trying to communicate is spy work is a nasty business. He wouldn't care, which I think is true. I think you can say that about people in that line of work. It is what it is. And I was thinking when I watched it most recently, you could have just probably left his body in the street and still had that communicated. You could still have Camille saying like, "You're just going to leave your friend there," and then he could say he didn't care. That sort of thing. I genuinely don't know why he throws him in the trash can. But it doesn't derail the movie for me. No. But I can see that criticism. I think they could have gone about it a different way and tweaked it. Maybe that's a writer's strike issue. But it is what it is. Yeah, I don't have a genuine defense for it. It's always been a head scratcher for me. I'm not honestly sure why that's been the case.
Just one thing I suddenly thought about. Obviously, Mathis when he's reintroduced in Quantum, Daniel Craig goes to him asking for help. Mathis lives in this fantastic house, having been tortured by MI6, and put up with their apologies. He's drinking wine. He's got a woman. He lives in a lovely place on this planet. When Daniel Craig's Bond says it's what he would have wanted, I think that Mathis knew what he was doing when he followed Daniel Bond back into the field. He was, there's always going to be that risk that he's got this great life. He's probably retired. He's not doing anything else. He's just living off whatever money he's made and, living a great life. He would have known what he was leaving, and he would have known the risk when following Bond back into the field, I think. So maybe Daniel Craig was right when he said it's what he would have wanted. He knew his risks. He knew what he was leaving behind. He could happily have put Bond on that plane, maybe set him up with some money, maybe set him with some contacts, and then left it there. But he went with him.
Quantum gets better and better.
I think there are. I think I can. I'm definitely not as impassioned as our Rob is about this binning scene, and I can see why. There's that motivation to make it look like, it's a cold world out there. These are spies. We're all just acquaintances. You can't get too emotional. You can't get too deep. Our bodies are just physical, and all that. So I can see why they did it, and I can see why they're trying to apply that to Bond's character. I think the only thing I'd question is, if you just look around at you, it's like, but I can see it, but it doesn't make us like James Bond very much. Like, do we like this guy? That's my problem with it. And throughout the film, really, Quantum of Solace, because he's pretty hell bent. He's not doing a lot of things where he's your hero, and I think that's just a little bit damaging. And I think it's kind of venturing and tagging onto maybe the wrong aspects of Casino Royale for me. Like kind of it's tapped into what I didn't want it to tap into. I wanted it to move away a little bit from this.
Yeah, I think if you had not in the context of the scene, I think if he hadn't held him and been with him and consoled him as he was dying, I think that speaks to his kindness.
Yes.
So I think if you don't have
like
that,
you said, if it left it at that, maybe.
Yeah, I think if that combined with I'm just moving on. It is what it is. Just kind of, Bond's been in a situation where he's just had to, From Russia with Love, when Karen Bay's dead, he has that tender moment, but then it's just switch off. I got to move on. That's been the name of the game for a long time.
Mathis, by the way, what a character. He has become so quickly one of my, just those two movies, one of my all-time favourite Bond allies. So maybe that hurts so much when he was literally binned. But no, I enjoyed so much of this here, unashamedly. I think Almeric is, yes, he's a very weak villain with a very, very weak henchman. Elvis is... there is nothing intimidating about Elvis apart from his hair. And does he do anything? He gets injured at one point. Isn't he incompetent? That's really his gross skill is incompetence. I think at some point James Bond is actually doing spy work in this movie. Oh my word. He's not just a blunt instrument after all, and I think it's brilliant. I love Bond going rogue. I've always loved Bond going rogue. Is stockpiling water really the biggest way to have high stakes, or the quickest way to have high stakes? I don't think it is. I think it's probably a little bit of a trying to be a bit too clever, there's a global energy crisis, isn't there? And what if a Bond villain stockpiled water? I wasn't down for it, don't like it, but I think there's some things that he does. Almeric is absolutely fine. Dominic Green, I've got to get calling him that. Dominic Green, absolutely fine. The Hotel in the Desert is a really cool place for an end Bond finale. I mean, it feels like they ran out of budget because there's no people there. And I know there's all sorts of stuff about writer strikes on at the same time as this, and it's kind of a miracle this film got made anyway. There's no doubting at this point the commitment to James Bond and the commitment to the role and all that kind of stuff. So overall, I'm really enjoying it. There's every now and then James Bond, this incarnation of James Bond, seems to delight in blowing his cover, and in turn getting people very badly hurt. So obviously, you people need to find a new place to meet.
Can I offer an opinion? I really think you people should find a better place to meet.
Well, you were doing so well. You were doing so well. And now, you're not. Because everyone knows you're there. Although, now I've said that, it does mean that everyone stands up and he gets a look at everyone. Maybe it is great spy work. But just don't be quite so smug. I think this film is far better than I remembered it, and it's sort of sailed up the rankings of my of where I had the five latest movies in my head. One thing that is completely unforgivable, and will remain that forever, is that blinking theme song, Another Way to Die. It could have been amazing, and Cue the Music have shown that it can be really, really good. But it seems like to have been deliberately underproduced in a kind of shoebox down a well somewhere, and it is absolute bobbins because of it. It's out of tune. I don't understand this, and it seems like a deliberate, too clever attempt. By the way, Kleinman's titles during this period are absolute box office. They're unbelievable. So yeah, it's just an aberration to me. Further to this, and let's keep digging. It's just another really good movie. I really, really enjoyed it. I really like the end where he's got the chance to do in Vesper's lover and he doesn't, and the way he handles all that, I think is really good. I really liked it.
This man and I have some unfinished business.
Is he still alive?
He is.
I'm surprised.
Some of the action is outstanding. We go a bit silly with the Bourne stuff. We go a bit like shaky cam and isn't this realistic? But yeah, I just, just thanking people in traffic. Yeah, I really enjoyed it recently. This Craig hate's going really badly, isn't it? Oh gosh.
I really like what was said about Camille. I think that's one of the strongest points of Quantum. I just hate that they then have a character like Strawberry Fields, with whom Bond does have sex with, and it feels very unnecessary.
I can't imagine. You must be furious.
Do you want to go to a party?
Party? But I have nothing to wear.
We'll fix that.
And even the way that she gets murdered with the whole Goldfinger reference and dipped in oil.
You might like to tell her your theory about there being no oil. Her lungs are full of it.
It was green.
No doubt, but why?
It's just misdirection.
I mean, why her, Bond? She was just supposed to send you home. She worked in an office, collecting reports. Look how well your charm works, James. They'll do anything for you, won't they? How many is that now?
I get what they were trying to do, but it comes off as a bit too much to me, and it doesn't really fit in that whole sort of Craig arc of grieving Vesper the way that the whole Camille relationship does to me.
I think my frustration with Quantum of Solace is why add to a film that's great? it's like it's like when you get downloadable content on a computer game, and you've just played a computer game, and it's like the best game you've played, and then they give you an extra bit of downloadable content. You think, well, that's fine, but it doesn't actually add to the greatness of what we've had. And the idea of this, there's a kind of apologist line at the moment about how you, to get the best out of Quantum, you need to watch it in conjunction with Casino Royale. And whilst I understand that kind of thought process, I don't think it adds anything to Casino Royale whatsoever. I really don't. I think there's good parts in it. I like Camille. I actually like Dominic Green these days.
Yeah.
I new locations, great. Again, I think Craig performs well as the Bond he's written to be in this. I really don't buy this whole writer's strike thing. There obviously was a writer's strike, don't get me wrong. I'm not, I'm not some conspiracy theories like, oh, climate change not real, and nothing like that. But what I'm saying is this is more.
You're on the record. You're on the record, John.
But what shall I say? License to Kill was part of a writer's strike. And what License to Kill did was, right, well, what we're going to do is we're going to write the most simple story. We're going to write a revenge story, and it's going to be simple. And we're just going to keep it like that, but we're going to have a director who understands James Bond. And Quantum of Solace, in essence, is a revenge story. It's got a lot more going on as well around it, but it has got that revenge element to it. But you've got a director who does not understand James Bond. And that's not me, that's not even an opinion. That's actually like a man who says, I don't like James Bond, I don't watch James Bond, but because James Bond is going down the route of Jason Bourne, I can appreciate this. They were the words that came out of the director's mouth. And when that is your mentality, as a James Bond fan, I struggle with that. And I don't have a massive problem with the binning scene. I actually think there is a understanding why it happens. But I think the reason why some people see it as so unsympathetic is because this director has made James Bond unsympathetic throughout. So it's like that's like the highlight of it all. There's not much dimension to the character. It's all blinded by rage. And in License to Kill, James Bond is blinded by rage, but you still have those ebbs and flows of humor and Bond-like moments that keep you on the side of Bond. And I'm not sure. I think Quantum tips it the other way, unfortunately. And it's not a criticism of Craig. It's a criticism of the direction and the writing to an extent.
It is one of my least favorite films, but I am learning to appreciate more. In our recent Farewell to Arms session, one of my hot take was that Dominic Green is probably one of the better or more interesting villains in the 5 Craig films. I really like him, and I like the idea that there's this quantum, has been said. And Dominic Green is not. I think he is someone who you believe operates in this world. He's not some, crazed, I don't know, whatever, megalomaniac who's going to, I don't know, who's only interested in chaos. I'm saying the same things here, so sorry for boring our listeners and viewers. But anyway, so there is a lot to like. Camille, locations, yeah. I think a lot of this is in retrospect, and I understand why. I've been thinking recently, Daniel Craig, his first 4 films, 2006 to 2015, 4 films in 9 years is pretty good going. I think if you were told a new guy had been cast and he's going to do 4 films in the next 9 years, you'd be like, whoa, that is a good. I just almost wish that they maybe had a bit more time spent on Quantum of Solace, and personally for me, didn't make it. I think it's an interesting choice, but didn't make it directly after Casino Royale, but still had the element of Quantum, still had Dominic Green as the villain, still had that character of Camille, not necessarily going down, a traditional Bond girl type vibe, but and then I think that would take us into an even better place when we get to Skyfall, which, as I say, is my favourite. But obviously, a lot of the themes of that, as we'll come on to, is about Old Dog and everything. And I know, it's like he's over the hill, but he's only so. And I know a lot of that came after, but I just think, in retrospect, Quantum of Solace, if it was 2010 or if it was 2009, maybe, then I don't know, and not directly after. Not like rushing into it, like let's go and do this straight after. I think it might have put it in an even stronger place.
Can we all be friends though and agree that this is his worst haircut by an absolute mile?
Yeah.
Is it so different from Casino Royale? I don't remember.
Yeah, the continuity's gone, hasn't it?
There's loads of gel. It's gone rock hard in this one.
I remember someone said that it looks as though somebody stepped on his head. And
So flat.
When I gave my overall view of Casino Royale before, how I came away thinking, I didn't quite like it on first viewing and it kind of petered out. I remember coming out of Quantum of Solace I felt like this did have a climax. This did build up to a finale, which I was really pleased about.
You promised that you...
Let you go?
I answered your questions. I told you what you wanted to know about Quantum.
Yes, you did. And your friends would know that, so they're probably looking for you. But the good news is, you're in the middle of a desert. Here. I bet you make it 20 miles before you consider drinking that. Goodbye, Mr. Green.
A slight showdown with Dominic Green. I know it didn't result in how he kills Dominic Green, but there was an end fight, which is what we lacked in Casino Royale. There were explosions, there was fire, there was an airplane kind of set piece to some extent, great locations. There were many things where I came out thinking it's done some things right that I was missing in Casino Royale in terms of some of those Bond things that I was pleased to see again, which made me feel a little bit positive about it when I first saw it.
Well, Tosca isn't for everyone.
Keep watching our Daniel Craig retrospective, where Bond went bigger than ever in Skyfall.